What if the future of your smartphone, your car, even national security, what if it all hinged on this tiny little component from a politically charged corner of the world?
Sounds dramatic, right?
Uh,
But it's not fiction.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
This is the very real, very complex challenge facing the United States, Taiwan, and China. Right now, welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah, where we really try to go beyond just the headlines.
Exactly. We want to unravel this intricate, often misunderstood relationship between these three global powers. Our mission today is to get past the surface level, to really understand the delicate dance, diplomacy, economics, defense.
All wrapped up in what people are calling the Semiconductor Strait.
Precisely.
And our mission, specifically for you, our listener, is, well, it's to simplify this incredibly intricate topic.
Right.
We're using what we call the Feynman technique.
Right. Breaking it down.
Yeah, breaking down complex ideas
Right.
into, their simplest forms. We'll identify together what we still don't fully get, connect the dots.
With clear analogies, hopefully.
Exactly. Clear, everyday analogies. The goal is for you to walk away from this deep dive feeling genuinely well-informed, not just overloaded with facts, but with a real grasp of the nuances.
We want those aha moments, understanding the forces at play.
That's the plan. Less overwhelm, more understanding.
So to guide us, we've pulled together a really rich stack of sources. We're looking at detailed strategic analyses, insights, RAND commentary, for example.
Yeah, America, Taiwan, China, navigating the Semiconductor Strait. Good piece. And another one on strategic ambiguity to strategic anxiety.
Right. And geopolitical takes from the Foreign Policy Research Institute, plus, keeping it current with AP News, TLDR News, Global.
A real mix. It gives us different angles.
Definitely. A comprehensive picture.
And look, as always, we're here to distill the key takeaways from these sources. We aim for a balanced view, especially when things get politically sensitive.
Which they often do with this topic.
They certainly do. We know these issues touch on national interests, conflicting viewpoints. Our job is just to report, analyze, and help you understand the different perspectives in the material.
Without taking sides.
Absolutely not. We're not endorsing anything, just presenting the information so you can form your own informed conclusions.
Okay, so let's set the stage. At the absolute heart of this geopolitical triangle, right in the middle.
Yep.
It's one crucial item. Semiconductors.
Chips. Tiny little things, but massive impact.
Exactly. These aren't just any chips, they're the advanced ones.
Yep.
Powering everything.
Yeah.
Your phone, your car, high-end military gear, AI.
Everything cutting edge.
And they are a massive point of contention, a critical form of leverage. It's become a strategic battleground.
And understanding why these tiny components hold such immense sway. Well, that's where our deep dive really begins.
Okay, let's start by unpacking a core policy. It's shaped this whole dynamic for, decades now?
It really has.
This thing called strategic ambiguity. So, put simply, it's the long-standing U.S. approach to Taiwan. Washington helps Taiwan defend itself, warns China against using force. But here's the kicker. It doesn't automatically promise direct U.S. military intervention if China attacks.
It's deliberately vague, a careful balancing act.
Exactly.
And if we dig into the intent behind it, like our sources do, it's fascinating. It's designed as deterrence by uncertainty.
Okay, what does that mean practically?
Well, on one hand, it tries to discourage a Chinese invasion by keeping Beijing guessing. Will the U.S. jump in? Won't they? How big a response? That vagueness creates doubt, hopefully hesitation.
Makes sense.
But on the other hand, it also aims to discourage Taiwan from, declaring full independence unilaterally, because that could provoke China.
So it's a two-way street, keeping both sides cautious.
Exactly. A two-pronged strategy designed to stop rash escalatory moves from either Beijing or Taipei.
That's actually pretty clever. Here's an analogy maybe. Imagine a parent telling their teenagers, look, if you break that major house rule, there will be consequences.
Okay, but I'm not telling you exactly what they are. Could be serious, could be less so. The point isn't being mean, it's keeping everyone on their best behavior through a bit of mystery.
Right, the uncertainty is the deterrent.
Yeah. The kids might think twice because they don't know if it's losing their phone for a day or being grounded for a month. China doesn't know if attacking Taiwan means a full U.S. response, and Taiwan knows declaring independence might not get a guaranteed U.S. rescue. Deters both extremes.
That's a good way to put it. And this isn't just like a handshake deal. It has a real legal foundation. The Taiwan Relations Act, the TRA, passed back in 1979.
Okay, the TRA, what does it actually do?
Well, it legally obligates the U.S. to provide Taiwan with defensive articles, weapons, support, and maintain the U.S. capacity to resist coercion against Taiwan.
Right.
It's a solid commitment to Taiwan's self-defense.
But
And this is absolutely crucial, it does not guarantee automatic U.S. military intervention. It's U.S. domestic law, managing an unofficial relationship. It is not a mutual defense treaty like NATO. Ah, okay. That distinction really busts the common myth, doesn't it? You hear it all the time. The U.S. has a treaty to defend Taiwan.
all the time. And
Yeah.
it's just not accurate.
Fact. No treaty. Support is governed by this domestic law, the TRA, and the policy of strategic ambiguity. Not an automatic trigger for war.
Correct. A very important nuance.
So how did we get here? What's the history behind the TRA?
Well, it came out of a huge geopolitical shift. The U.S. officially recognized the People's Republic of China, the PRC, in 1979.
Right. Nixon goes to China. Normalization.
Exactly. And that meant severing formal diplomatic ties with Taiwan, the Republic of China. So the TRA was passed to replace the previous U.S.-Taiwan Mutual Defense Treaty.
So it filled the gap left by ending formal relations.
Precisely. It set the stage for this carefully managed, unofficial partnership we've seen ever since.
Now, what's really striking, and honestly a bit confusing sometimes, is how different presidents have interpreted this strategic ambiguity. It feels like it shifts.
It certainly seems that way sometimes. You look at President Biden, for instance. On multiple occasions, he sounded like he was leaning towards strategic clarity.
Yeah, I remember that, saying the U.S. would defend Taiwan, comparing it to NATO.
Exactly. But then almost every time, the White House or State Department officials would kind of walk it back, carefully reinforcing the ambiguity.
So almost like the underlying policy reasserted itself.
It felt like that, like the institutional commitment to ambiguity pushed back against those clearer statements.
And wasn't there something similar with George W. Bush?
Yeah, back in 2001, he publicly said the U.S. would do whatever it took to help Taiwan defend itself. Similar vibe.
So these statements, are they trying to scare China more effectively? Or do they risk provoking them?
That's the debate, right? Some see it as bolstering deterrence. Others worry it provokes Beijing and maybe encourages Taiwan towards independence, which ambiguity is meant to discourage.
And then you have President Trump, who went the other way.
Completely, especially in his second term. He consistently refused to say what the U.S. would do, just wouldn't comment. Famously said, "I never comment on that. I don't want to ever put myself in that position."
So ironically, by refusing to clarify, he kind of reinforced the traditional ambiguity.
In a way, yes. His approach, though rooted in a different philosophy, ended up aligning with that core uncertainty.
So with all these different signals, this rhetorical back and forth, does anything actually stay the same? What's the constant here?
That's a really important question, and our sources suggest, yes, some core elements have been remarkably consistent despite the rhetoric.
Like what?
Well, U.S. arms sales to Taiwan, they've continued steadily through different administrations. Military planning for contingencies in the region, that hasn't stopped. Joint exercises with allies, still happening.
Okay.
Plus, you have strong, enduring bipartisan skepticism of Beijing in the U.S. Congress. That translates into consistent support for Taiwan in legislation.
So Congress acts as a kind of anchor.
A very strong one. And crucially, the legal framework, the Taiwan Relations Act itself, remains fully intact. So while the words from the top might change, the practical support, the institutional structure, that bedrock seems to hold.
Providing stability beneath the waves, so to speak.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this delicate balance of strategic ambiguity. But things really started to shift, or at least the feel of things shifted, under President Trump. He brought a different playbook, right? More transactional.
Absolutely. This is where it gets really interesting, as you say. The tone and the tools changed, even if the underlying ambiguity kind of persisted.
How so? What was the big shift?
One of the most prominent things was this intense focus on burden sharing. Trump's core message was loud and clear. Allies, including Taiwan, need to pay more for their own defense. Stop relying so much on the U.S.
I remember that rhetoric. Very businesslike.
Extremely. He famously said, Taiwan should pay us for defense. You know, we're no different than an insurance company. Taiwan doesn't give us anything. That framed security not as a shared value, but like a service contract.
Which must have sounded alarming in Taipei.
You bet. And it wasn't just talk. There were specific demands. Trump and officials like Elbridge Colby suggested Taiwan should boost its defense spending way up to 10% of its GDP.
10%. That sounds enormous. What are they spending now?
Around 2.45% of GDP. They've pledged to get above 3%, but jumping to 10%, that's a monumental shift for any country's budget.
Yeah, that seems almost impossible practically.
Well, it's incredibly difficult, and Taiwan has a counter-argument here. Their defense spending might be a large chunk of their government budget, but their overall government budget compared to their GDP is smaller than, say, South Korea or the U.S.
Okay, so percentages can be tricky.
Very. And just for context, China's defense spending increase last year alone was about 80% of Taiwan's entire annual defense budget. So catching up or even hitting that 10% target is a huge, huge ask. It needs more than just political will.
Okay, so burden sharing was one big piece. What else changed?
Tariffs. And this aggressive push for reshoring critical supply chains, especially semiconductors. Trump used tariffs, quotas, industrial policy as leverage.
Trying to bring manufacturing back to the U.S.
Exactly. Driven by national security concerns, yes, but also a strong dose of economic nationalism, rebuilding American industry.
Were there specific actions against Taiwan on that front?
Oh, yeah. Recently, Trump imposed a 20% tariff on Taiwan. It was actually down from the 32% he first proposed, but still higher than the 15% on Japan and South Korea.
Why target Taiwan specifically like that?
Largely driven by the U.S. trade deficit with Taiwan, it ballooned to $76 billion, and guess what? Made up nearly 60% of that.
Semiconductors.
Bingo. The U.S. saw Taiwan's dominance in advanced chips as directly impacting American jobs and industry.
And Trump was pretty blunt about it, right? Accusing them of stealing business.
He was. He accused Taiwan of stealing America's chip business, even claimed they did take about 100% of our chip business, which, needs clarification.
Right. It's specifically the most advanced chips where Taiwan dominates, around 92% through TSMC. Not all chips.
Exactly. But his frustration was clearly aimed at that strategic dominance, viewing it very much as a zero-sum game.
This more personalized, transactional style, did it make things less predictable?
Definitely led to what you might call deal-maker signaling. Decisions seemed more personalized, less tied to the usual diplomatic process. That created more uncertainty for allies.
Even if the underlying military stuff continued.
Yeah, even if arms sales and training programs were still moving through the regular channels, it created this disconnect between the rhetoric from the top and the established policy mechanisms. Made long-term planning harder for Taipei.
Which must have ramped up anxiety there. This fear that maybe U.S. support isn't guaranteed, that it could be traded away.
Exactly. The fear was palpable. Could U.S. support, which is absolutely vital for Taiwan, be bargained away in some big trade deal with China? It introduced this profound unpredictability.
Can we see that anxiety in actual data, like polling?
We can. A Brookings Institute survey showed Taiwanese negative perception of the U.S. jumped pretty significantly from 24% up to over 40%.
Wow.
And belief that the U.S. would actually intervene militarily if China attacked. That dropped from about 45% down to 37.5%.
So a tangible erosion of confidence.
Clearly. A growing sense, at least in the public mind, that maybe that U.S. commitment wasn't quite as rock solid as it once seemed.
This really brings up a key knowledge gap question for you, our listener, to think about. When you hear this transactional talk, how much is it driven by genuine U.S. security needs, like securing supply chains, maintaining a tech edge?
Versus how much is it purely economic, driven by trade deficits, wanting jobs back in the U.S.?
Right. And how do those different motivations, security versus economics, actually clash or combine when it comes to making real policy? It's complex.
It really is. Untangling those drivers is key to understanding what's happening.
Okay, so despite all that transactional talk and the anxiety it caused, our sources seem to agree that a complete U.S. ditching of Taiwan or some grand bargain with Beijing is actually highly unlikely.
That's a critical point. It sounds dramatic in headlines, but the reality is such a move faces enormous obstacles. There are strong guardrails in place.
What's the first guardrail? The most basic one.
U.S. law itself, the Taiwan Relations Act. We keep coming back to it because it's fundamental.
Right, the obligation to provide defensive support.
Exactly. It doesn't promise intervention, but it does mandate tangible, ongoing support. That creates legal and institutional inertia. You can't just flip a switch and turn it off. It would require Congress to repeal the act.
Which seems improbable, given the current climate.
Highly improbable. Which brings us to the second guardrail, Congress.
Consistently pro-Taiwan, China skeptical.
Overwhelmingly so, and bipartisan. Congress can push through arms packages, allocate funding, impose sanctions on China. They create this legislative momentum that's very hard for any president to just ignore or reverse quickly.
So even if a president wanted a grand bargain, Congress could block it.
They could certainly make it incredibly difficult, yes. Then there's the Pentagon.
The military planning reality.
Yeah, the U.S. military posture in the Indo-Pacific. We're talking logistics, exercises, munition stockpiles, working with allies. This involves years, decades even, of massive investment and detailed planning.
It's not something you just undo overnight.
Absolutely not. These are deep-seated operational realities, institutional commitments involving billions of dollars, and immense strategic effort focused on the region. It's not just a policy memo you can rewrite.
And it's not just internal U.S. factors, right? Allies play a role. Industry.
A huge role, arguably indispensable. Let's talk allies first. Coordination with Japan, Australia, increasingly European nations. It's routine now, deeply integrated.
Japan seems key, just geographically.
Absolutely pivotal. It's part of that first island chain running through Taiwan. Japan hosts major U.S. bases. Its own defense budget is growing. Its security is directly tied to Taiwan's. Any U.S. abandonment of Taiwan would terrify Tokyo.
In Australia.
And Australia.
Right. The AUKUS Security Pact, especially the long-term plan for nuclear-powered submarines, even if years away, signals a deep long-term commitment to regional security alongside the U.S. and U.K. It reinforces coalition deterrence planning.
And Europe. They seem to be getting more concerned, too.
Their ambiguity is definitely narrowing. Why? Because they're realizing their own strategic dependence on Taiwan's advanced chips, and they see the broader implications for global trade and security. Plus, European companies like ASML in the Netherlands make crucial chip-making equipment. Their stance matters commercially and strategically.
So abandoning Taiwan would wreck these alliances.
It would profoundly damage them, undermine U.S. credibility globally. And then there's industry, specifically the chip industry.
TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company.
The crown jewel, as they say, produces over 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors, the cutting-edge stuff, 5-nanometer, 3-nanometer chips, vital for defense, AI, everything.
Stuff the U.S. absolutely needs access to. Cannot afford to lose access. There's no immediate replacement for that capability. It's foundational economic and military power.
Which is why the U.S. pushed so hard for TSMC to build factories in the U.S., in Arizona.
And TSMC responded massively. Over $165 billion committed now. The original $65 billion plus another $100 billion. New fabs, packaging facilities, R&D.
That's the largest foreign direct investment in U.S. history, isn't it?
It is. Shows you how strategically vital securing that chip supply is for Washington.
So this leads to the indispensable argument.
Exactly. While the U.S. wants and needs more domestic chip capacity, Taiwan's role, especially for the most advanced chips, remains absolutely central for years to come. Indispensable.
Meaning abandoning Taiwan isn't just bad geopolitics, it's economic and strategic suicide for the U.S. itself.
Pretty much. Disrupt global supply chains, cripple U.S. tech leadership, undermine military modernization, shatter alliances. The cost to Washington itself would be catastrophic. That interconnectedness is perhaps the strongest guardrail of all.
Okay, so Taiwan isn't just sitting back and relying on these guardrails. Faced with pressure from Beijing and that uncertainty from Washington, they're actively doing things right, taking steps.
Absolutely. Taipei is not passive. They're taking proactive, strategic steps to strengthen their own position and, crucially, to align their interests even more tightly with the U.S.
What's the core of their defense strategy now?
It's focused on asymmetric defense, sometimes called the porcupine strategy.
Porcupine.
Yeah.
Meaning prickly and hard to attack.
Exactly. Instead of trying to match China's massive military dollar for dollar, tank for tank, they're prioritizing cheaper, mobile, survivable systems. Things designed to inflict maximum pain on a stronger attacker.
Like what kind of systems?
See-the-Nile weapons are key, anti-ship missiles, smart mines. Also, highly survivable command and control, mobile air defenses that are hard to find and destroy, dispersing their forces. The goal is to make an invasion incredibly costly for China.
Militarily bloody, economically devastating, politically disastrous.
Precisely. Make the price of invasion so high that Beijing decides it's just not worth it.
We used the analogy of the agile martial artist earlier, facing a bigger opponent, focusing on targeted strikes, using their momentum against them.
That's a great way to think about it. The anti-ship missiles are those quick, targeted strikes against an invasion fleet. The mobile air defenses are the evasive moves making it costly to control the sky. It's about making every move the attacker makes painful and difficult.
And it's not just military hardware, is it? There's this idea of societal resilience.
A huge focus now, yes. Led by President Lai Ching-te's new Whole-of-Society Defense Resilience Committee. It's about getting everyone involved: government, local authorities, civil society, private industry.
Preparing the whole country, not just the military.
Right. Boosting civil defense planning, hardening critical infrastructure like power grids and communication networks, and really improving what they call information hygiene.
Meaning fighting disinformation.
Exactly. Countering the constant flood of disinformation and psychological warfare from China that aims to undermine morale and trust in the government.
Our sources mention some specific examples of this resilience building.
Yeah, concrete things. Tackling reliance on imported energy, that's a big vulnerability by investing in renewables and diversifying sources. Protecting undersea communication cables, which are vital but have been targeted before.
China's been implicated in cutting those, right?
Yeah, there have been incidents involving Chinese vessels near cable breaks, yes. Also, ensuring food and resource stockpiles, strengthening cyber defenses against literally thousands of attacks daily. It's about making Taiwan resilient even under blockade or intense pressure.
A tough nut to crack society-wide.
That's the aim. And this resilience push ties directly into Taiwan's economic alignment with the U.S.
Beyond just the big TSMC investments in Arizona.
Yes. Taiwan is actively pursuing co-development, closer ties across the whole semiconductor supply chain design, manufacturing, packaging. It's a deliberate strategy to weld U.S. and Taiwanese interests together.
Making Taiwan even more indispensable to the U.S. economy and security.
Precisely. It reinforces that security relationship through mutual economic dependence.
Which brings us back to that narrative. If we build together, we defend together. It really underpins that transactional pressure from Washington.
It does. It's a very explicit quid pro quo playing out. Show us commitment to our economic security via chips, and our commitment to your defense will be stronger.
But are there challenges for Taiwan in this? It can't be perfectly smooth.
No, definitely challenges. Even with TSMC building huge fabs in Arizona, reducing that massive trade deficit with the U.S. is still a tall order, especially with booming demand for AI chips made in Taiwan.
Right, that demand actually increases Taiwan's exports.
Exactly. And Washington has reportedly pushed TSMC to invest in Intel's competing foundry business, something TSMC seems less keen on commercially. So potential friction points exist even within this alignment.
Taiwan's also working the political angles in Washington.
Very actively, cultivating bipartisan support in Congress, working to smooth over trade frictions on things like market access or standards. They know congressional support is a vital backstop.
But they still face fundamental hurdles, right?
They do. The lack of formal diplomatic ties complicates direct government-to-government interaction. Any formal U.S.-Taiwan trade deal risks immediate, harsh retaliation from China.
A constant threat.
Yes. And there's always the worry that U.S.-Taiwan talks might get sidelined if Washington prioritizes talks with Beijing. Internally, Taiwan's divided parliament can slow down big moves like defense spending increases. Plus, there's been historical hesitancy about being too blunt with the public about the threat, fearing panic.
Although President Lai seems to be shifting on that, calling China a foreign hostile force.
That was a notable shift, yes, potentially signaling a more direct communication strategy moving forward.
Okay, let's shift focus to China's calculus. It's not just about invasion, right? There's this constant pressure campaign, gray zone tactics.
Exactly. That's crucial to understand. China employs these coercive actions that deliberately stay below the threshold of triggering a full-blown war.
Designed to achieve goals without fighting.
Precisely. Erode Taiwan's will, shift the status quo, intimidate, without giving the U.S. a clear reason to intervene militarily. Our sources detail this clearly. Regular PLA air and naval activity near Taiwan jets, warships testing defenses, crossing median lines.
That's harassment.
It is. Plus China Coast Guard maneuvers and these maritime militia swarms, fishing boats acting as unofficial naval proxies, pushing boundaries, testing Taiwan's responses.
And it goes beyond the military and Coast Guard.
Oh, much broader. Economic boycotts of Taiwanese goods, customs slowdowns, relentless cyber intrusions targeting government and infrastructure thousands daily, political influence ops trying to sow discord, pressuring international companies to list Taiwan as part of China. Cutting trade with countries like Lithuania just for opening a Taiwanese representative office.
Wow, a full-spectrum pressure campaign.
It really is.
So the goal isn't necessarily conquest tomorrow, but maybe exhaustion over time. making unification seem inevitable.
That seems to be a major part of it. Erode morale, normalize Chinese pressure, make resistance seem futile, hoping Taiwan eventually concludes unification is the only option, all without firing the really big shots. It's psychological attrition, slow-motion pressure.
But even with all that, a whole-scale invasion still seems incredibly risky for China.
Extraordinarily costly and uncertain, yes. The sources emphasize this. An amphibious invasion across the Taiwan Strait. Immense logistical nightmare. No recent combat experience in that kind of operation. Brutal urban warfare likely. Fierce resistance expected.
And even lesser options, like a blockade.
Even a quarantine or blockade light carries huge escalation risks with the U.S. and allies. Could trigger severe sanctions, international condemnation, maybe even military responses. Beijing has a lot to weigh.
What factors are they weighing, beyond just the military side?
Domestic stability is huge. Economic stability, social cohesion, crucial for the Communist Party's legitimacy. A costly, drawn-out conflict could wreck their economy, cause unrest.
Global standing, too.
Definitely. Impact on global markets, potential for widespread sanctions that could cripple their growth, and the leadership optics failure or a bloody stalemate would be devastating for Xi Jinping's authority. So the threshold for overt war remains very high.
But the gray zone stuff can ramp up quickly.
Very quickly. Often in response to perceived provocations from Taiwan or the U.S., monitoring those step changes, not just temporary spikes, is vital.
And this isn't just a U.S.-China-Taiwan triangle. Other regional players matter. A lot.
Critically important. Japan, we mentioned, is central. Geography, U.S. bases, its own growing defense capability, pivotal for any denial strategy. Their security is linked to Taiwan's.
Australia and AUKUS send signals, too.
They do. Those future submarine capabilities, even if distant, reinforced coalition planning, complicate China's thinking, shows long-term commitment.
And Europe's narrowing ambiguity.
Because of chips, trade implications, the rules-based order, their economic weight matters, especially on tech controls. This broader coalition makes any unilateral move by China much riskier.
Okay, so we've got the policies, players, pressures. What might the future actually look like? Our sources lay out 3 plausible scenarios.
Right. Scenario 1, the most likely according to the sources, is status quo plus deterrence.
Meaning things stay roughly the same, but maybe stronger?
Kind of. Continued U.S. arms sales, steady joint training with allies like Japan and Australia, incremental sanctions or controls on Beijing, more chip cooperation, persistent gray zone friction from China, yes, but no formal defense treaty, just tighter practical coordination or reinforced deterrence.
Okay, scenario 2.
Transactional squeeze. This is where the U.S. really leans into using economic leverage tariffs, market access tying defense support directly to industrial outcomes.
We're seeing elements of this now, you said.
We are. Pushing for faster U.S.-based chip fabs, demanding price concessions, explicit asks on Taiwan's defense spending and readiness. A very direct quid pro quo. You give us economic security, we give you defense support.
And the third scenario, the headline grabber.
Grand bargain with Beijing. The idea the U.S. trades away Taiwan for some big deal with China on trade, tech, climate, whatever.
And you said this is low probability.
Very low. Because of all those guardrails we discussed, U.S. law, TRA, Congress, Pentagon planning, allied blowback, domestic politics. The barriers are just immense, highly unlikely, despite the persistent anxiety about it.
So for you, our listener, wanting to track this,
Yeah.
what are the key things to watch? The dashboard items.
Good question. Look for new tariffs or quotas targeting Taiwan, especially chips. Watch the size, type, and frequency of U.S. arms sales and joint military exercises. Keep an eye on industrial news, new fab commitments, subsidies, export controls. Are the U.S.-China military hotlines active and being used? And monitor PLA activity, air incursions, maritime movements. Look for step changes, not just temporary spikes.
These are the real indicators of shifts.
Exactly.
But even with careful watching, things can go wrong fast. What are the big risks of miscalculation here?
The biggest is probably escalation ladders. A small incident, a collision at sea, an aggressive jet intercept, a cyber attack spirals out of control through rapid tit-for-tat actions. Politicians lose control.
Especially with tension so high.
Precisely. And the information space is another huge risk.
Disinformation, narrative traps.
Yeah. Misleading frames, U.S. abandonment versus Taiwanese provocation. Amplified online can paint leaders into corners, making de-escalation politically impossible.
So if things do start to spiral, are there ways out? Off-ramps?
There have to be. Sources stress the importance of quiet talks via allies, using back channels. calibrated sanctions relief to reward de-escalation, face-saving ways for both sides to sequence military pullbacks. Diplomacy, even in crisis, is vital. Allies would be key facilitators.
Okay, let's quickly nail down some common myths versus facts to really simplify things before we wrap up.
Good idea. Let's clarify.
Myth. The U.S. has a treaty to defend Taiwan.
Fact. No treaty. Support is governed by U.S. domestic law, TRA, and the policy of strategic ambiguity. No automatic military commitment.
Myth. U.S. tariffs on Taiwan mean the alliance is collapsing.
Fact. Tariffs are economic leverage. They complicate things, create friction, but often coexist with deep security ties, especially in strategic sectors.
Myth. Building more chip fabs in the U.S. makes Taiwan irrelevant.
Fact. Near term, no. Global chip supply, especially for advanced nodes, remains interdependent. Taiwan's role is central for years. U.S. fabs add resilience, not replacement.
Myth. If China blockades Taiwan, war is automatic.
Fact. A blockade is a major step, but multiple diplomatic and response options exist below full-scale war. The threshold for conflict remains very high due to the costs for China.
Great clarifications. Okay, let's bring this all together.
So, the bottom line. This idea of the U.S. ditching Taiwan is largely an overstated headline. The real story is this incredibly complex interplay. Strategic ambiguity evolving, transactional pressure from Washington, Taiwan's own proactive defense, and economic moves.
All swirling around those critical semiconductors.
Exactly. Washington is pushing Taiwan for more cost-sharing, faster readiness, more chips built in the U.S., while still maintaining that core deterrence framework.
And if Taiwan meets those demands, strengthens its defenses, and allies remain supportive,
then strategic ambiguity, maybe in a tougher, more demanding form, can hold. It's not abandonment, it's adaptation, a resilient strategy.
Okay, so as we finish this deep dive, we've got a few final knowledge gap questions for you, our listener, to mull over.
Things to keep exploring.
First, how might Taiwan's own internal politics at divided parliament, democratic debates, affect how quickly they can ramp up defense spending or implement resilience measures? What are the internal hurdles?
Second, beyond semiconductors, what other industries or resources could become leverage points in this U.S.-Taiwan-China dynamic down the road? New tech, critical minerals, how might that change the game?
And third, if a gray zone incident did escalate fast, what are the most crucial off-ramps? What specific things could be done? And what role would allies like Japan or Australia actually play in those critical moments to pull things back from the brink?
And to leave you with one final provocative thought, Taiwan's National Security Council recently put it starkly. Our own fate is controlled in our hands. In this incredibly complex geopolitical landscape we've walked through, how much agency does Taiwan truly have? How much can they control their own fate versus how much is inevitably tied to the decisions, the interests, the strategic games of much larger powers?
A powerful question indeed. How much control is real? How much is constrained? Something to really ponder.
It lies at the heart of it all.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the intricate world of the Semiconductor Strait. We hope you feel well-informed and ready to keep tracking these vital developments.
Thanks for listening.
Until next time.